I just have to get out of here. I go into the office. Mark Carrano was in there with Ric Flair. And I go, just take me off the TV show. I'm going home. At one moment, you're wrestling in front of thousands of people in a sold-out arena. The next, you're in a high school gym wrestling around 12 people. In the unpredictable world of professional wrestling, success can vanish as quickly as it arrives. And these are 10 more wrestlers who nuked their own career. Number 1, Marty Jannetty. Now, the Rockers were a high-flying duo that shook up the tag team scene after their debut in 1988. But that changed on December 2nd, 91, as Shawn Michaels gave him the super kick heard around the world and sent Jannetty flying to the barber hop glass. Or as Bobby Heenan put it, the dastardly coward jumped right through. And this was actually supposed to be the beginning of Jannetty's rise as a top babyface in WWE. But that was never meant to be. Michael Ells and Jannetty were originally scheduled to fight at WrestleMania 8, but Jannetty was arrested and charged in January of 92 for possession of cocaine, drug paraphernalia, and resisting arrest. Those WrestleMania plans were immediately scrapped, and so was Jannetty's chances of ever being a top babyface in the company. Now, after leaving WWE in 1992, Marty did make a return in May of 93 and beat Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental Championship. The reign would only last 19 days, where he'd lost the title back to Michaels at a house show in Albany, New York. The remainder of his run saw Jannetty feud with Dink the Clown and lose his match against Ludwig Borger at SummerSlam 93. Marty would be given multiple chances and blew them all away. Vince McMahon had virtually had it with Jannetty due to multiple arrests on tours and disappearances from shows. Marty was once again hired in the WWE in 1995, teaming up with Leif Cassidy as a new Rockers. He would have a brief reunion with Shawn Michaels in 2005, and after winning a full-time contract on an episode of Raw, Marty couldn't even travel outside of the state due to a court order, and this led to another release. But outside of the ring, Jannetty's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He made headlines for bizarre social media posts, including disturbing and controversial statements that blurred the line between trolling and troubling cries for help. These posts often went viral, but not for the right reasons. Legal troubles, alleged drug use, and self-destructive choices continued to overshadow his in-ring legacy. What should have been a celebrated career filled with championships and accolades instead became a tragic example of wasted potential. It sadly wasn't one isolated incident that caused his major downfall, but rather a pattern of poor decisions, personal demons, and inability to adapt as the industry evolved. Jannetty remains a what could have been story in wrestling law, an undeniable gifted performer who, unlike his former tag partner, couldn't overcome the temptations and pitfalls that fame brought with it. Number 2, Jaxson Ryker. Jaxson Ryker's claim to fame was during his run in TNA. The former WWE star had all the potential in the world to be a big name, so it was no surprise that WWE signed him in 2017. Now, Ryker's career didn't have the success most NXT stars had before he made the jump to the main roster. Ryker was paired with Wesley Blake and Steve Cutler to form the Forgotten Sons. The trio had a rather uneventful run in the developmental system, but in all fairness, that was due to the lame duck booking than their talent. It seemed that Vince McMahon genuinely liked Ryker and Forgotten Sons when they made their debut on SmackDown on April 20th, 2020. They even got a win over the WWE Tag Team Champions, The New Day. But then Jaxson Ryker sent out a tweet that ruined not only his career, but 2 other careers. The tweet in question criticized the Black Lives Movement, and Ryker thanked President Donald Trump. The cherry on the top was that Ryker finished off his tweet with his signature catchphrase. Ryker caught heat for this immediately, with guys like Kevin Owens and Mustafa Ali notably responding to Ryker's tweet with disapproval. The Forgotten Sons were removed from WWE television, and the gimmick was dropped instantly. Unfortunately for Cutler and Blake, they never recovered from that moment, and WWE fired them a year later. However, the company still saw value in Jaxson Ryker. They tried to turn him face by feuding with Elias, but Ryker was not clicking as a babyface at all. Perhaps it was the cheap haircut he was forced to get or the lame Elias storyline that resulted in his face turn. But there's also no denying that Ryker still had heat from fans about the tweet he made a year earlier. though he won the Elias feud. He was put on main event until his release on November 21st, 2021. Jackson's career remained dead in the water. The former WWE star felt that he'd said nothing wrong and explained why on the Wrestling for Faith podcast. Well, June 1st, 2020, and it says 7:52 p.m. I just moved into my new house, here in Morrisville, North Carolina. And, we've all got our own views on who's anytime there's a president, there's a leader. That's what makes America great. That's why I served 4 years in the Marine Corps. So I could, tweet about my approval for a certain president. I wasn't one of those who was trying to bash anybody else. I was simply putting out my support for a president that I thought was doing a good job for this country. Gas prices were down. Unemployment was down. Jobs were up. There's just so much going on with the economy was flourishing. You can do the studies and look at it. Man, and that was just my tweet to basically show my support. Which the funny thing is prior to that, Lord, even I was looking up through some history of things. I would tweet or Instagram certain things about Donald Trump, but for some reason that day, and I believe you touched on it before we started, some things that were going on in America at the time, I tweeted my support for him before. So, to me, there was nothing wrong with that tweet. There was no, racial undertone. There was no jabs. There was nothing but me saying, God bless America, and thankful for the President of the United States that we had at the time. And like I said, I served 4 years in the Marine Corps from 02 to 06. Does that give me a right to be an idiot on social media and go out and say stupid stuff? Absolutely not. But does it give me a right to support a president that I voted for? I do believe it was. And then look, we've never talked about it. First time right here, people getting a chance to hear about it. I'm excited to kind of let it out. But I could see if there was something wrong with that tweet. But in my eyes, I said nothing wrong. And so that's where I stand on Amanda. But Reika would give up professional wrestling altogether in 2024. Number 3, Loki. Loki was making noise down in Ring of Honor, where he was the inaugural Ring of Honor World Champion. His title reign didn't last long, but having matches against names like AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels will definitely put you on the map. This helped him transition to TNA and New Japan Pro Wrestling, where Loki captured the X Division and IWGP Junior Heavyweight titles, respectively. By the time 2008 rolled around, Loki was one of the hottest professional wrestlers on the planet, though his size was seen as a disadvantage by some. Loki brought a unique blend of realism and entertainment to his matches that made him stand out from guys like Matt Sydal or AJ Styles. Still, it was a surprise when Loki joined WWE. While size was a contributing factor, his resume didn't come without some controversy behind the scenes. That being, he's very difficult to work with. The former Ring of Honor World Champion has been described as someone who takes the business too seriously and refused a job on multiple occasions. And nobody can deny Loki's talents, as it's hard to find a bad Loki match. But there's a reason why he hasn't returned to Ring of Honor since 2006. Word is that Gabe Spelke became so frustrated with Loki that he refused to book him after his second run. The former Ring of Honor booker has yet to confirm this, but it's no coincidence that the inaugural Ring of Honor champion disappeared from the promotion after 2006. But WWE was his chance to finally break and prove that he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. For years, there were rumors that the company wanted to bring him in. So, it sounded like WWE was willing to put the time and invest into the former world champion. And sadly, his introduction to the WWE Universe was on the worst version of NXT, and it didn't get any better from there. Known as Cavol in WWE, the former X Division champion had Michelle McCool and Layla as his mentors for the second season. This did Cavol no favors because Leo were channel changers that annoyed WWE fans. This held him back as a character. To be fair, creative never booked him as something that fans should care about in the first place. Though Loki had some fun moments here and there, it was clear that creative didn't see him as anything other than a low Mick Carter at best. His most memorable moment in the company was his match against Dolph Ziggler at Survivor Series 2011 because he could show off what he did best. The match was great, but that didn't matter since he was released shortly after. It's unknown why Vince treated Cavill like an enhancement talent. He was rather popular on NXT. Hell, he won the second season. That could have been due to the infamous promo Cavill cut that mentioned TNA. Even he himself said that Vince wanted him gone after dropping that line. But despite the failed WWE run, he was able to return to TNA in New Japan Pro Wrestling. However, the issues regarding Loki's attitude managed a return. Loki was fired from New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2013 because officials were furious about him wrestling in a suit without clearing it with them first. Loki has talked about his firing from New Japan, and he claims that wearing a suit during his matches was a protest against wrestling in Fukushima. The backstory behind this is that Loki told officials that he did not want to wrestle at the event because of the health and safety reasons stemming from the nuclear disaster. New Japan booked him for the match anyway, and he had a fantastic bout against Kota Ibushi and Prince Dion. But New Japan was so furious about Loki's disrespect that they hadn't booked him since. Now, his return to TNA was slightly better thanks to his time in the underrated Beatdown Clan faction with Bobby Lashley, MVP, Samoa Joe, and Kenny King. His fourth return as a member of the new LAX was great, and he won the X Division title in both of his stints and was on the cusp of entering the main event. But his runs were so hot and cold because Loki's attitude problem prevented him from reaching a higher level. Jeff Jarrett would talk about Loki's run on his My Well podcast, saying Loki, especially as we sit here today, and it just wasn't in TNA and different promotions. He was always his worst enemy. His athletic ability and his believability in the ring. He knew how to work incredibly good, so he wouldn't hurt you. There would always be something when you get him right to a point that you're going to push him to the next level. And I don't want to say self-destruct, but I've read that about him and I'm like, yeah, a lot of times he was his own worst enemy climbing that ladder. And for whatever reason, he's a guy that I think will go down in history. And it's like, damn, what if because his skill set was there and he could talk as well? He is very stoic delivery. It was a unique presentation that I thought had a lot of money in it. But I never did quite get over that hump. This career parallels with Austin Aries as his final run in TNA burned too many bridges with officials. Loki transitioned over to Major League Wrestling and finally got a world title run that lasted 205 days. And though he did have a pretty good run in MLW, Loki was never able to reach the same level of popularity that he had in TNA. Number 4, Joey Ryan. Joey Ryan had been in the wrestling scene for over a decade before his fame in the business grew. Ryan had competed in TNA, Lucha Underground, and was even at the first AEW show, Allen. Ryan separated himself from other wrestlers by becoming an over-sexualized porn star character that fans just ate up. He was a modern-day Val Venus, albeit cranked up to about an 11. Ryan seemed to be on top of the world in 2020. He owned bar wrestling in Los Angeles and was being booked left and right in various promotions. But then the speaking out movement happened, and he was exposed as a sexual predator. 17 different accusations were made against Ryan, and some of those accusations were sexual assault, grooming underage girls, and unwanted sexual advances. Ryan heavily denied the allegations. In fact, he released a long and detailed video on his YouTube channel refuting every allegation made against him. Ryan eventually took down the video, but he did show evidence that fought back against accusations levied against him. There was no way to know if his evidence was legitimate, as at the same time the accusations against Ryan were just that, accusations, as he was never charged for any crimes. But though there were wrestlers who backed some of the allegations about Joey Ryan's behavior, 17 allegations is hard to negate, and Ryan's career was heavily damaged because of it. The court of public opinion decided that Joey Ryan was guilty. He was fired from Impact Wrestling. Bar Wrestling was forced to shut down. Hell, he was even removed from all the Being the Elite videos from the Young Bucks. Joey Ryan was blacklisted from wrestling, and every promotional person that he worked with has denounced him. Right now, Ryan's wrestling career is virtually dead. He hasn't wrestled in 5 years, and it's unlikely a promotion is willing to take a chance on him anytime soon. He attempted a comeback in 2021 by organizing a Wrestling for Women charity event, and he received mountains of backlash for it. Every wrestler or promoter pulled out the event once it was discovered that bar wrestling was behind it. Number 5, Jack Gallagher. And Jack Gallagher was another name ruined by the speaking out movement. The former star came into WWE thanks to the 2016 Cruiserweight Classic and immediately made an impact. He had something that many of the cruiserweights were missing: charisma and personality. Now his time in WWE will be relegated to NXT, and 205 Live when 2020 hit. But it would get much worse when Gallagher was accused of sexual assault on June 19, 2020. Under the username of PlantMommy300, the Twitter user recalled a New Year's Eve party in 2014 and detailed Gallagher poured an excessive amount of alcohol into a glass and detailed a moment he tried to assault her. WWE suspended Gallagher on June 30th, but it wouldn't take long for the company to release him from his contract. The former WWE star would address those allegations in an interview with Wrestling Incorporated, and it's pretty much an admission of guilt. Following an accusation made in June of 2020 as part of the Speaking Out movement, I was released from my contract with the WWE. I did release a statement then because it didn't feel like the right thing to do at the time, and now taking the time to process what has happened and would like to respond. In 2014 at a New Year's Eve party, I met a young woman, and my behavior towards her was inappropriate. As this party was nearly 6 years ago and I had drunk quite a large amount of alcohol that night. Unfortunately, I do not recollect what happened. I wish to make it clear that drinking is not an excuse for my behavior that night. I want to express my deepest regrets, and I'm genuinely sorry for the upset that I have caused. Gallagher has not wrestled since June 15th, 2020, and he's pretty much retired since he made the transition over to MMA. Number 6, Jimmy Havoc. The speaking out allegations didn't just affect a number of WWE stars. Jimmy Havoc was caught in the crossfire due to an allegation from his ex-girlfriend Rebecca Crow. She accused Havoc of being physically and emotionally abusive throughout a 3-year relationship. Another woman who wished to remain anonymous accused a former AW star Tony Khan immediately suspended Havoc and released a statement claiming that he would be seeking treatment for substance abuse and mental health. However, Havoc was ultimately let out of his contract in August of 2020. Now, let's be fair, Jimmy was never going to be a big star in AW. Known for being a deathmatch wrestler, Havoc came in with a ton of buzz in AW, but it was clear that Tony Khan didn't really know what to do with him. Like everyone on this list so far, Havoc completely disappeared from professional wrestling. His final match was against the Young Bucks on June 11th, 2020. Number 7, Michael Elgin. Michael Elgin is another casualty of the Speaking Out movement, and it's a shame since the former Ring of Honor World Champion's career was finally on the rise. When you thought of one of the best indie wrestlers in the world, Elgin was on the list during his run in the mid-2010s. His run as world champion and Ring of Honor opened plenty of eyes, but his time in New Japan really helped elevate his status. But in 2017, it all came crashing down as reports surfaced that Elgin mishandled sexual allegations. Elgin was the owner of Glory Pro Wrestling, and one of his students, Malone, alleged that she was sexually assaulted by one of her classmates, but he ignored her claim for 9 months. What's even worse is that he privately discredited her claims. The former Ring of Honor World Champion lost some bookings, but that didn't ruin his career. However, the multiple accusations of sexual misconduct surely did. These included explicit videos, which we can't mention on YouTube, as well as some other allegations where Elgin was sending unwanted explicit photos to female wrestlers. Elgin was hot in Impact Wrestling during this time, and he seemed primed to win the Impact World Championship as he was part of a 5-way match for the world title. But Impact pulled him from the match and suspended him until further notice. Unfortunately for Elgin, more allegations came out and Impact had no other choice but to fire him. And we still wrestles, but it's not in any top indie promotions. It's doubtful that his career will ever have the same level of success that it had prior to the accusations. Number 8, Marty Scurll. Perhaps the name with the biggest chance at making it as a top star in AW or WWE was Marty the Villain Scurll. Like the previous entrants, he had built his name on the independent scene, but it wasn't until he joined the Bullet Club where he started gaining notoriety. Before joining the popular faction, he was a bland babyface until he changed his persona to the villain during his time in Progress Wrestling. That villain persona helped further establish him as a single star during his Bullet Club run, and it seemed that Sir was posed for big things in professional wrestling. He even turned down an AW contract in 2020. In return, he gained more power in Ring of Honor as he joined the creative team in addition to being an on-screen performer. However, the speaking out movement exposed another performer. In this case, a female came forward and claimed that at the age of 16, Skrull had taken advantage of her while she was drunk. The former Ring of Honor star admitted on a Twitter post of the encounter, but it was made clear that it was consensual. I'm aware that a young woman has bravely come forward with her account of sexual abuse by some members of the wrestling community in the UK 5 years ago, a community I was part of. Although I truly believe that an encounter that evening was consensual and the fact that the encounter was legal is almost not the point. I understand now that she views our encounter as part of a bigger problem within the wrestling community. What concerns me at this moment is that from what I've been reading, she's a fan of wrestling, and it was made to feel unsafe within that community. That is not acceptable. I also understand that some people have been attacking her on social media, and I implore you to please stop. She has a right to her voice, and it's our responsibility to listen. Now, fans weren't happy with that apology, so Skrull released another one, but the damage was already done. Ring of Honor released Skrull from his contract. AEW, TNA, and WWE has had the opportunity to sign him for 5 years, but none of the mainstream companies would touch him after the allegations. The former Ring of Honor star is still wrestling on the independent scene, but in no-name promotions, as even places like Progress Wrestling or NW want nothing to do with him. Number 9, Deborah. In an unfortunate case, Deborah represents one of the darkest sides of pro wrestling. Most people know that she was Stronghold Steve Austin's wife, but Deborah had a solid career before she linked up with Austin. She started out a wrestling run in WCW as a manager for Steve under Scorn Sickle in 96, and after she turned on him in 97, she began briefly managing Goldberg and Alex right before heading over to WWE in 98. Deborah would come in as Jeff Jarrett's girlfriend, and she began wrestling in 99, and even beating Sable in an evening gown match to win the WWE Women's Championship. But Deborah wasn't on screen with Austin until 2001. By that time, the two were already married, and it genuinely seemed like a match made in heaven. However, that illusion was shattered on June 15th, 2002, when Deborah called the police on her husband and claimed that Austin had hit her. Since Austin was there at the time the police called, a warrant was issued for his arrest, and Austin turned himself in the following day. He was charged with domestic violence and pleaded no contest, and he was given a year's probation, $1,000 fine, and 80 hours of community service. Now, whilst you would think that this would dampen Austin's career, it did the opposite. Deborah's career had massively suffered because WWE went to great lengths to keep his domestic violence charges a secret. Now, it didn't help that Austin actively denied the allegations and muddied the waters for Deborah even further. But Deborah was pretty much blacklisted from the business due to no fault of her own. In an exclusive interview with Fox News in 2007, she detailed how WWE went out of their way to try and hide the news about Austin's abuse. The company knew, and sadly money was more important than the well-being of Deborah. At number 10, Austin Aries. And when you look at Austin Aries' resume, you'll see that he had a storied career. Aries made his wrestling debut in 2000 and quickly emerged as one of the best names in professional wrestling. It wasn't just that Austin could go between the ropes, he also had the gift of the gab. But despite his brilliant work in Ring of Honor and Dragon Gate, it was Austin's second run in TNA that elevated him into the conversation as one of the best wrestlers in the world. His incredible run as X-Division champion reminded fans of a remarkable time when Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, and Christopher Daniels spearheaded the division for the mid-200s. His world title reign only made Austin Aries look better. Aries had the it factor that so many guys in TNA or WWE lacked. However, there were early signs that the former TNA World Heavyweight Champion wasn't exactly Mr. Favorable behind the scenes. That came to light with the Christy Hemme situation, where the former TNA announcer made a mistake by calling Aries and Bobby Roode by a different name. Aries was upset and got in Christy's face, and she quickly made the change by calling their names correctly. But then Austin proceeded to put his crotch right in her face. Luckily for Aries, he managed to escape the ordeal unscathed and was able to sign with WWE in 2016. There was definitely some concern that Austin's height would play a major factor in his WWE career. But for the most part, it genuinely seemed as if the company liked him. In his first year on the main roster, he competed in a singles match at WrestleMania 33. However, Aries' time in WWE didn't last long, as he was released in 2017. As reports surfaced that Aries was not a popular figure backstage, which is similar to previous reports in the past, but that wasn't what nuked his career. Despite his backstage reputation, he always had a good rapport with TNA Wrestling. He managed to come back in 2018 and resume his spot at the top as he won the TNA World Heavyweight Championship within the first 5 months of his third stint. Though his WWE career was dead, everything seemed to be going well for Austin until October 14th, 2018. That night, Austin fought Johnny Impact in the main event of Bound for Glory, and the two were having a great match. Then after Impact pinned Aries to win the world title, Aries no-sold the finish and stormed off to the back. That moment overshadowed Johnny Impact's huge title win, and it would be the last time Aries stepped foot into TNA Wrestling. Now, Aries claims that this moment was planned, but given the fact that he was never seen in promotion after that incident, that's highly unlikely. But what broke the straw on the camel's back was Aries was accused by several women of misconduct during the speaking out movement as well. With the various allegations, this was the final nail in Austin's career. He denied the accusations, but it was too late for Austin Aries. Like Scarl, Aries still wrestles on the independent scene and does have a nice spot in Major League Wrestling, but he'll never reach the heights that he once did during his time in TNA in WWE.